the people were saying, "He has gone out of his mind." In other words, crazy. How would you define crazy? What is it that a person could do or say that you would label as crazy? I'm really curious because we are only into the 3rd chapter of Mark. That's not very far. And already people are saying that Jesus is out of his mind, that he's crazy. What has he said? What has he done in 3 short chapters to be labeled as crazy? As I alluded to at the beginning, Michael Curry, our presiding bishop, referred to this gospel in a homily that he preached at the 77th General Convention in 2012. And from that homily, he was inspired to write a book, which he entitled Crazy Christians, A Call to Follow Jesus. Now, according to the scripture text, and according to the writings of Bishop Curry says that Jesus was and is crazy, and therefore, Curry continues, we need some crazy Christians. Here's what Bishop Curry actually wrote in his book. We need some Christians who are as crazy as the Lord. Crazy enough to love like Jesus, to give like Jesus, to forgive like Jesus, to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with God like Jesus. Crazy enough to dare to change the world from the nightmare it often is into something more close to the God that he dreams, the dreams that God has for the world. And for those who would follow him, those who would be his disciples, those who would live as people on the way, it might come as a shock, but they are all called to craziness. As I was reading the scripture, and as I was reflecting on the people calling Jesus crazy, and our presiding bishop referring to Jesus as crazy, I sort of came to Jesus' defense. And I thought to myself, who really is the crazy one? Is it Jesus? Is Jesus really crazy? Or is it the scribes, the Pharisees, the people, the political and religious leaders of the day? Were they the crazy one? And I started disagreeing with Bishop Curry. Don't tell him. But I started looking at the words and the actions of the religious and political leaders of the day, and I thought, I wonder who really is the crazy ones. And so in order to help me put some logic to all of this, I decided that I needed to figure out, what does crazy mean? Perhaps there's different types of craziness. And so in order to help me with this debate, I went to good old Merriam-Webster. And I looked up crazy and I found 2 definitions. The first definition, not mentally sound, marked by thoughts or actions that lack reason, insane, impractical, erratic, unusual. The crowds and the religious leaders of the day were pressing in on Jesus. They were accusing him of being unlawful. They were calling him names and judging him. They said he has Beelzebul, the ruler of the demons, therefore he could not cast out demons. They said that he was speaking blasphemy. They said that he has an unclean spirit. They projected onto Jesus their own interior conflict and division. They declared something that was holy and sacred and beautiful to be unclean, dirty, and deprived of God. Their accusations about Jesus actually says more about them, themselves, than about Jesus. Their accusations revealed the depth of their division amongst themselves. Their accusations, their words, their judgments were a way of avoiding themselves. So, not mentally sound, erratic, unusual behavior. Might that sound a little bit like the scribes, the religious and political leaders of the day? Might they be the crazy ones? It is that type of crazy. That's what divides households. That's what divides communities. That's what divides nations of the world. So, is Jesus crazy? Well, let's look at the second definition. Distracted with a desire or excitement. Absurdly fond. Infatuated. Passionately preoccupied. Obsessed. Well, in the case of Jesus, he is passionately preoccupied with radical love, inclusion, and the acceptance of all people. In the case of Jesus, he is obsessed with the need to provide healing for everyone and anyone. No matter who they are, there is no limit to the healing which Jesus can provide. In Jesus' case, he has a desire for forgiveness, and he will forgive everyone, no exception. He is absurdly fond of dining with outcasts and sinners. He, Jesus, is distracted with a desire for extreme inclusion, the unity where all shall be one. He is going against norms, and he is breaking rules, but it's all for that everyone can experience the grace of God. So, who is the crazy one? Jesus is pushing it to its limits when he actually says, any and all who do the will of God are brother, sister, and mother. He is radically pushing the sense of who we are as family. That we, who do the will of God, are mother and brother and sister for one another. Some might say that that is crazy. So again, I ask the question, who is the one that is out of their mind. Is Jesus crazy? Maybe Bishop Curry is right. Maybe Jesus is a bit crazy. And maybe because Jesus is a bit crazy, because of his passion and his desires and his obsession, maybe he does need some crazy Christians to follow him. He needs Christians who are crazy enough to believe that God is real and that Jesus lives. Christians that are crazy enough to follow the radical way of the gospel: love, mercy, and acceptance. Crazy enough to believe that the love of God is greater than all the powers of evil and death. Crazy enough to believe that whoever does the will of God is brother, sister, and mother to Jesus and to one another. We do need Christians who are crazy enough that by their words and by their actions, they will state that no child should ever go to bed hungry. That the division that happens within households and communities can be healed. That the country doesn't have to be divided. We can join together in order to care for one another's needs. The nations of the world can lay down guns, swords, and shields in order to embrace peace. That we all can be one because we are created in the love and the image of God. And that we all are equally called as God's children and therefore ought to be respected as such. Crazy? Maybe. But crazy as it may seem, we are all called to be disciples. We are all called to be God's children. We are all called to follow the way of Jesus, the way of love. So yes, we are called to Christian crazy.